Thank you so much, Trish. Thanks for inviting me out today. Thanks everybody for coming. Like she says, I own Gingham Market, a Gatherings Kitchen. We have been in Lakewood as a business for about 14 years. So we started as a catering company and doing cooking classes. So I've been teaching cooking classes for a long time. Most of the classes at our kitchen are hands-on, so I kind of get you involved in it so you can do the work. So this is, it's kind of fun. Today you can sit back and just enjoy the show and I think you're going to get the recipe for what we're making today. What I decided to make, my choice for today was risotto. I think that as I was talking to Trish a little bit ago, something she said that she's intimidated by. She says she never makes it at home because there's something about it that's intimidating to her. And I think of it as such an easy, basic dish that once you kind of learn the technique of it, you can make it so many variations. So it's kind of a vehicle for using up some people have a good connotation with this word, some people have bad, leftovers. So we have, in our household, leftovers are gold. It's like treasure. So the leftovers, all the bits and the pieces in your fridge, risotto is a great place that you can kind of incorporate them. You have a half of a cooked sweet potato, you can throw it in here. So like I said, I think it's a good basic dish for that. We're going to show you kind of the most basic version, and then we're going to add some things to make it a little bit more seasonal. So what we're doing, we're going to start with a shallot. So the basis for the risotto, the first thing you start with is what we call something that's aromatic. So in this case, we're using a shallot. Shallots are these little red onion. They're in the onion family. They're a little bit milder. If you didn't have shallots at home, you could use any kind of onion you like. So if you had just a regular old white onion, I've used scallions before in it, no matter what you have. But today I'm using the shallots. It's kind of the traditional. And I do like them. It's an onion that I use often for salad dressings because it's so small, so you can mince it up really nicely. So what we're going to do is just kind of make little slices in here, like so, and then cut it into tiny little pieces. The reason you want to start off with something that's going to give the rice a lot of flavor from the very beginning. So the idea with this is that, let me get this chopped up for you, is that the rice is a hard kernel. Think about a kernel of rice is like a little pebble almost, so it's so hard. So we're going to try to get as much flavor into the inside of this rice as possible. We're not just cooking it plain and then adding things on the outside. We're adding the flavor from the very beginning. So we've got our shallot here. We're going to put on our pan. We're going to add a little bit of butter. If you were trying to be a little bit less, if you wanted a little less cholesterol, you could go with just olive oil in this case, but I like the flavor of the butter, so we're going to put some butter in today. We're splurging today at the center. So we're going to use a combination of butter and a little bit of olive oil. So those two. I like the flavor of the butter, the creaminess of the butter, and the olive oil also keeps it from scorching so it doesn't brown, because we're just going to want to kind of toast our shallots in here. So I'm going to add some that I already got going. We're going to add the one that I chopped up. And we're going to start sauteing this. I got to work this a minute a little higher. And we just want to stir it up, melt our butter, and we want these to start getting a little bit translucent. So we're flavoring the butter that we put in here, we're flavoring the olive oil with those shallots. I start seasoning from the very beginning. So seasoning means you're adding a little bit of salt and a touch of pepper from the very instant. So like I said, our rice is a hard little kernel, and we want to get the flavor to the middle of it. So, and the rice that we're using today, I really didn't talk about that yet. This is arborio rice. This is just a sample of the packet. Arborio rice it's an Italian rice. They're short grained, so very, very small kernels of rice that is similar to the rice that we would use in sushi. So the idea about the shorter the grain of rice, the smaller the grain of rice, the higher starch content that it has. You can use anything, and actually you can make risotto style food even with pasta. So you can use it other kind, but you just don't get it won't be the same amount of creaminess with like a long grain rice because it doesn't have as much starch in it to begin with, so it won't be as creamy. But yes, you can do it. You can make it. You can try. Yep. Yes, you can. You can use brown rice as well. Yeah, all of those things. But arboreal rice would be the traditional one that you would use, again, because of the high starch content that it has. The myth about, sometimes people think, well, I don't like risotto because of all the cream that's in it. Traditional risotto doesn't have any cream in it. It's a creamy dish because of the starch in the rice and, of course, a little bit of butter and cheese, too. So it's not, faultless from that standpoint. Yes? We do carry this exact package of rice. No, we do sell it at the market. So the idea with the market that we opened, so we are up on Madison Avenue. We've been there for 14 years with no market, and we just opened it this year. Is I wanted to have, for one thing, the kind of market I would want on my corner. I've lived in Lakewood a long time, and it's something that I've always wanted was this kind of market where you could get locally made things. You can get imported, kind of all the artisanal kind of specialty goods. So we've got all of that there. So, and we're adding things all the time, really. If there's something that if you're looking for and you don't find, just tell us. We've added things in that people have asked for. So, all right. So I've got the shallots. You can see beautiful. They're just kind of starting to color a little bit, and I'm going to add that rice to it. So adding the arborio, and we're going to give it a stir, and we're going to toast the grains just a little bit. So again, we've got our shallot. We're going to kind of just coat them. All right, once they're all coated, you can add other things too. When I talk about the aromatics, another, if you like garlic, if you're a garlic lover, you could be sauteing some garlic in at this point too, and it would give the risotto a little bit of a garlicky flavor to it. You can use, I do a version that's a mushroom risotto that I'll take and mince up some dried mushrooms that you've reconstituted, saute those in at this point. So anyway, so I've got it all coated. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some wine. Some people don't cook with wine. If you don't, you just skip this over and you go right to the stocks. The stock level of it, but I like the wine in it. I love the flavor that it gives. The little bit of, the alcohol is gonna completely cook off. So we're using about a cup or so of wine in there. We're gonna stir, and we're gonna stir. We're gonna let that absorb. So again, you think about, oh yes. So this is a Pinot Grigio. So this is just an Italian wine. Normally, for cooking wines, what I would say is either a Pinot Grigio, a Sauvignon Blanc. Those are the two. And the reason, what I was going to just follow up with, the reason why we use the wine is the acidity. So there's a little bit of something about that acidity that gives a balance to the dish. So if you're not using wine, sometimes you'll feel like it's lacking. You could do a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of lemon in here, again, to match that acidity. What I would say is, it does not have to be an expensive wine. The cooking wines, I go for the cheap wines. At home, for me, a lot of times it's the reason it's what I'm drinking, so I might, use it and then I drink the rest of it. So I do want it to be drinkable wine. Wine does not last forever. My mother was famous for this. I opened up the pantry and there'd be like a bottle of wine that had been there for like a year open. I'm like, well, that's just my, for cooking. I'm like, no, it'll end up turning to vinegar or just flattening out. So I say if you do want to use wine and you do not drink a lot at home, buy the little Sutter Home, or I'm not endorsing any brands of wines or anything, but the little individual bottles or something, and just have that. So you just need it, one, and that's all you need. You don't have to worry about drinking the rest of it or what you're going to do with it. So that would be my recommendation. My big, strong, firm no, not that I'm giving you, was don't buy cooking wine. Don't buy anything in the grocery store in the vinegar section. There's a key right there, the vinegar section, that says cooking wine on it. They've salted it. They've made it completely undrinkable because of legal. It's an old, was it the blue laws or whatever those laws, whatever the laws were that you couldn't sell. So they've made it undrinkable. So it's useless. So I put the wine. So you see how it's already all absorbed in there? I don't know if you can you smell it already? It's smelling pretty good. So now I have stock. So today I decided we're going vegetarian. I wasn't sure if we had any vegetarians coming today. So we're just using vegetable stock. And we're going to put in, it's like a cup or so of stock at a time. So this is where we're working on the creaminess. So this is why people get scared of risotto, the idea of stirring it. So the stirring is kind of cooking it relatively slowly, and you're pulling that starch out. This is stock that we make at the kitchen. So our stock has no salt in it. So we have to be really careful when we're cooking that we are adding the salt. We're seasoning as we go. So we are going to make sure we add some salt. If you're using canned chicken stock or vegetable stock or bouillon, which is completely fine, you may not need to add so much of the salt to it. So use your own, or if you're cutting back on the salt. You're controllable, which is why I like to use my own stocks, the homemade ones, because they don't have the salt in them. So I can control what I want, how much I want to put it in, when I put it in. I'm going to add a little bit more. You want it to pretty much at this stage always be loose, always be soupy. You don't want it to look down and have it be seeing the bottom of the pan really at all. So we're going to stir a little bit more. Today we're going to add very traditional. So very traditional in a risotto, they call it alla Milanese. So from the northern Milan in Italy, northern region, they use a saffron. So I know saffron, not something everybody has in their pantry. It's kind of it's very expensive. It's the stamen of crocus flowers, which is all hand harvested. We're going to use it. I love the aroma of it. I love the flavor of it. We're going to just crimple it up in our fingers and put it in here. It's going to give a beautiful golden color to it because it's a natural food. It's a dye, basically. It's a natural dye. If you didn't have it, you don't need it. If you have if you want the color and a little bit of nice flavor, but you don't want to splurge on the saffron, you could use a little turmeric in here, which gives it that golden color and also a nice flavor. Turmeric has a beautiful flavor too. But it's the traditional kind of golden color. They also have, I don't know if you're familiar with the sazon, which is like a Puerto Rican Mexican spice. Little packets, and they have a sazon that has saffron in it. Very inexpensive, and you can just use a little bit of that packet in here too. Gives the flavor. All right, so see, I'm stirring, and now it's getting, when I stir, I can see the bottom a little bit. So what I'm going to do means it's time for more stock. I always say that this is a good dish to have for if you have some friends coming over, and they always want to be in the kitchen with you. And sometimes you really don't necessarily want them in the kitchen with you. You're trying to finish something. So I'll say, have a glass of wine and stir the risotto. So they can help. So get more salt, right? I added some stock. So for me, I'm adding some salt, and I'm going to put a little bit of pepper. For me, the rule I usually say is about half to a quarter amount of pepper as you're putting to salt. So it's not an equal. A lot of times people think salt and pepper, it's an equal thing. It really is not. It's more salt to pepper. Otherwise, it'll get very spicy. So at this point, I start doing a little bit of tasting just to see, and I'm tasting that my broth tastes good. I'm tasting that, is the risotto, is the arborio cooking enough? It's still very crunchy right now. No, that's not a silly question at all. So basically we use celery, carrots, onion. And usually we try to think from a proportion standpoint. There's something there, it's a classic French cooking term called mirepoix, which you may have heard before. So it's 2 parts onion to 1 part celery and carrots. So that's the base right there. So it's more onion. So you usually what I'll do, depending on what I'm making, so maybe, if you have like a 4-cup pitcher, one of those Pyrex or something. So I'll put a cup of carrots chopped up, a cup of celery chopped up, and then fill it with the onion on top. we'll use some tomato bits and pieces if we have them. So like ours, you can see this one is pretty golden today. So the ends, if we're making sandwiches, tops and bottoms off of your tomatoes can go in there. When you're making the stock, by the way, all the things, so you know when I took the peel off the shallot, all of those items, if you are a stock maker, feel like, can go into a little baggie, you can throw them in your freezer, and all of that stuff can go into the stock, so all those bits and pieces. So I might put mushrooms in it. From a vegetable standpoint, that's about it. So that what you don't want to put in are things like broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, the cruciferous and those things that are they're kind of gaseous, because you're putting this into a stock that you're going to then use to make other things maybe. So you want it to be a little bit more neutral. But that's basically all we use. And then it cooks pretty quickly. But otherwise, everything is just coarsely chopped. You put it in pot, cover it with water, usually about twice to 3 times as much. So you make sure you're covered with water. I'll usually throw in a little bit of thyme if I have the fresh. If I don't, some dried thyme, a bay leaf or 2, some parsley stems, or if I have it again, it's whatever I have in that case, and then nothing else. So no salt goes into it, no pepper, no seasoning. I bring it up to a boil. Once it comes up to a boil, you lower it to kind of a simmer, so it's kind of bubbling. And a vegetable stock, within an hour, you'll have a decent vegetable stock that you can use, and then you strain it out and freeze it. It's handy to have those things, and it does really feel good too to use up all of the spits and pieces and the scraps that you have around, to turn it into something. Especially if you have room in your freezer. All right, so now I'm going to take another little taster. Starting to get closer. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. All right, so I'm going to add some things. So we're going to do a little bit of mushrooms in ours today. So we're going to add a little bit. So I just have some button mushrooms that we happen to have. Again, I was trying to think about making it a little bit wintry. And again, it's the idea that you can use what you have left over. So we got a little butter melting. We're going to add our mushrooms. I am a big mushroom fan. Start that going again. I put the butter in. I'm just going to touch of olive oil too. And I have some more that I cut. I'm going to add those to it. All right, so dry. We don't want it to be. We're going to add a little bit more stock. That's the other thing that I'll say. People will say, oh, I had risotto. I don't like it. It's so pasty. Well, that's because it really wasn't done right. You weren't eating it fresh. It wasn't quite done right. It should be soupy. It should, when you put it on the plate or in a bowl, preferably like a pasta bowl, it should kind of spread on you. There should be a little liquid around it. All right. Over here, what I didn't do yet, right? A little bit of seasoning, a little salt and pepper. All right, so salt, pepper, butter, olive oil. We're going to add a little bit of fresh thyme. Again, we happen to have it. If you didn't, a little bit of dried thyme. So what I'm doing is kind of pulling off the little leaves. So you kind of take your little stem and you pull them backwards. So the little leaves come off of it. And then any of the little short stems you don't worry about. But you give them a little chop. And then we're going to add these to the mushrooms. So this is a great vehicle for putting leftovers in, like I said. We're getting close. We wanted to have, I'm sure you've heard of the term when we're talking about pasta, al dente. So al dente to the tooth. So you're chewing it, you're not gumming it. You have a little, there's some bite to it. It doesn't just, dissolve in your mouth. Risotto should be like that. So it shouldn't be crunchy. So you shouldn't go in and, have to crunch into it, but it should resist. It should resist the bite a little bit. So that's what I'm testing for. So I'm going to give another one. It's gotten close. A little more stock, which means a little more salt, just a touch. Meanwhile, the mushrooms are like giving up some juice. And it's looking good. We don't need to take them too far. And the other thing I brought was we happen to have some left over. We had some butternut squash. So we're going to use that. So we've got cubed butternut squash, just been roasted, about 30 minutes in the oven. We're going to add this to it. I thought it would give a nice flavor. Again, make it a little wintry. So this is what we're waiting for, this to get close to being done. We're going to heat this up just because it was cooked, but it's cold. So I'm going to add it to our mushrooms here. I don't know how much, proportion-wise. I think it's about there. Stir it around. Since we're getting close, the last thing we're going to need is to add some cheese to this. So we add more butter and we add a little bit of cheese. Today we're using Parmesan. That's the traditional cheese that you would use. There's no reason why you couldn't use, at the very, very end, any cheese you had. You could go without any cheese at all. It's just traditionally they would use this. I'm using a little grater, one of these little microplaners. This Parmesan Reggiano is a little bit high price ingredient, but you find with a lot of these ingredients, you don't need to use very much of it. So one of the reasons why it's so high priced, the Parmesan Reggiano is the most concentrated. So it's very concentrated, has a lot of protein in it, a ton of flavor in a tiny little bit. And when you use something like a microplaner, you can see how I barely got a nibble off of that and how much cheese you end up with by just grating it up. And you get a big pow with flavor. So we've got turn this off. Our veggies are going in now. So near the end of the cooking, we didn't want it to get too mushy. So we wanted to retain a little bit of what I say, like the vegetable's integrity a little bit. So if they were in there the whole time, they would completely break down and lose. So I like it to have a little bit of separation. So pretty colors here. So we're gonna stir in the Parmesan. We're gonna actually, a little bit more butter. Traditionally at the end, you stir in another, they say like a knob or two, a little bit of butter that goes in for flavor. And we stir this. I'm gonna add a little bit more stock again. Again, we want it to be loose. And at home often, or at the kitchen, what we'll do, the stock will be in another little pot. So I'll have it on the stove in a pot, kind of simmering away so it's really hot. So you don't lose any time when you transfer it so it doesn't get cold. So you have it hot. But again, you can see it works just as well without. The one thing about the pot, I would say, obviously you can use anything you have, make do with what you have. But if you did have one that had a little bit heavier bottom on it, it works a little bit better. So not your thinnest pan in the kitchen, something that has a little bit of weight to it. You can see this one has a bit of and that just helps with the scorching because you're cooking it for a long time. And you can see that I did step away. I wasn't really stirring it for 30 minutes. So you want it to be able to withstand that a little bit and not scorch. All right, it's getting down to the wire. I know you're probably getting a little hungry. Well, I'll let you decide, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's really good. So you think it's simple enough you could do this? Pretty easy, huh? All right, I think we're ready. I think we can start giving some samples. I'm going to add a little bit more cheese because we have some here. So just over the top. Oh, I was going to say about the leftovers. So we're using what we said, perhaps leftovers in here if you had them. In the springtime, we do our springtime risotto, which is really popular, where we'll put like peas and asparagus in here. We'll top it, if you wanted to top it with some protein and make it an entree instead of just a first course or a side dish. You can use sauteed shrimp in here is a perfect thing. you know, chicken, sliced grilled chicken could go in here. I think it's a great accompaniment to fish, so fish on the side with the risotto. When we have leftover risotto, what we'll do often is we'll make what we call risotto balls. So you take the cold, congealed risotto that's very clumpy. We'll add a little bit of mozzarella cheese to it, some herbs, roll it into little balls, bread them and fry them. And they're delicious, kind of cheesy. So it's a good, or you can make a patty, make like a little, you know, like a pancake with them the same way. If you don't want to bread them, you could just make the patty just like that and just saute them in a little bit of olive oil. And it's a delicious way to serve it leftover without trying to reconstitute it and make it. So I'm putting just a touch more of the stock, and just a touch more of that, and we're ready. So does anyone have any questions? Yes. So we do have, thank you for asking that. So we have cooking classes. We have a couple different styles of cooking classes. We have one we call Supper Club, and that is a one-off class that you take on, it's on Friday nights. So we have the same menu for the entire month. So this month's menu is Viva Italia. It's all Italian cooking. Next month we're doing kind of a Valentine one. We're having a tropical one in the spring. So that's a one-night thing. It's a good date night, friend night. People come on their own. When we say that's a little bit of cooking, because it is all hands-on cooking, but it's a lot of socializing. And then we have a basic techniques class, too, that's called Prep School. So that's a 5-week series. And that is hands-on, start from the beginning, where we teach you knife skills. We teach you how to make the stocks, all from scratch, all of those things. So, and that's all of it's on the website. It's ginghammarket.com. And I do have a stack of business cards, too, if anyone wanted to take a card as a reminder. But the website has our classes, and then it also has the items from the market. So we have, at Gingham Market, we have daily grab and go. So that means we have sandwiches, salads, soups, those items that change every day, as well as weekly dinners to go. So like this week, we're doing a pork tenderloin with rice and green beans. And you can see what's happening, by the way. See, it's getting a little bit pasty. So if I am doing this at home, or if I want to, I'll stop it right here, stop it, have that hot stock going, and then right before I serve it, start to add a little bit more. So it would go to the plate with a little bit more liquid than what you're getting, because it just the starch just dries, gets it really pasty. So you got fall version, like this, fall, winter. We have our springtime, I told you, with asparagus and peas. You got your summertime. So really, it's kind of one of those possibilities are endless kind of thing. Well, does anyone else have any questions? Anything else? Did you enjoy it? Are you enjoying the... Well, very good. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out. I hope that you did enjoy it. I hope you make it again. If you have any questions, you have my business card. You can email me, and I will answer your questions. I hope to see you at the market sometime or one of our classes. So thank you very much. Thank you. It was lovely coming out. So thanks. Thank you.